ISO 14001 and Environmental Management Systems EMS Training Module. Welcome back. In this session, we're going to delve into Clause 4 of ISO 14001, which is all about the context of the organization. Think of this as the foundational step. Before you can build an effective environmental management system, you need to deeply understand who you are as an organization and where you operate. This clause ensures your EMS isn't just a generic template, but something truly relevant and effective for your specific challenges and opportunities. It's about looking beyond your immediate operations and considering the broader environment in which you exist. Clause 4.1 is about identifying internal and external issues that affect the EMS. It helps the organization understand the bigger picture and factors that impact environmental performance. This slide explains the difference between internal and external issues that can impact an organization's environmental management system, EMS. Internal issues are those within the organization. Examples: company culture, availability of skilled staff, infrastructure, nature of products, training, past performance. These influence how well the EMS is planned and implemented. External issues are those outside the organization. Examples: climate conditions, legal requirements, economic conditions, technology, social pressure, competitors. These are factors the organization must monitor and respond to. The goal is to understand the environment in which the organization operates, both internally and externally, so the EMS can be more effective. While ISO 14001 doesn't tell you how to identify these issues, common strategic tools like SWOT analysis or PESTEL analysis can be very helpful. SWOT looks at your strengths and weaknesses, which are internal, and opportunities and threats, which are external. PESTEL is specifically for external factors: political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. You don't have to use these, but they provide a structured way to brainstorm and analyze. This slide covers Clause 4.2 of ISO 14001, which emphasizes understanding the interested parties of the organization. First, the organization must identify who its interested parties are, such as customers, regulators, employees, suppliers, and the community. Then, it should understand their needs and expectations, for example, legal compliance, environmental performance, or transparency. Why is this important? Because this helps the organization know what obligations it must meet and also anticipate risks or opportunities that may arise if those expectations are not met. Interested parties are individuals or organizations that can affect the organization, be affected by it, or perceive themselves to be affected by its actions or decisions. They are important because they have a legitimate interest in the organization's environmental performance. Internal interested parties include employees, shareholders, owners, and top management. External interested parties include customers who expect eco-friendly products, regulatory authorities who enforce compliance, local communities concerned with pollution or noise, suppliers and contractors who must align with environmental standards, investors who want sustainable business practices, NGOs, environmental groups pushing for eco-protection, emergency services for response planning, insurance companies that assess risk for coverage. Understanding their expectations helps in building trust and ensuring compliance. So, how do we identify and then address these needs? For identification, you can brainstorm internally, conduct stakeholder mapping to visualize who they are and their influence, review your legal registers for all compliance obligations, look at your contracts, hold community meetings, and set up feedback mechanisms like suggestion boxes or complaint hotlines. Once identified, addressing their needs involves several approaches. Firstly, fulfilling your compliance obligations. This means strictly adhering to all legal and regulatory requirements, like obtaining necessary permits or monitoring emissions. Secondly, considering voluntary initiatives, going beyond what's legally required. This could be exceeding emission standards, starting community engagement programs, implementing sustainable sourcing policies, or providing transparent environmental reports. Thirdly, establishing clear communication channels like public reports, newsletters, or even dedicated contact points for community queries. And finally, integrating their relevant needs directly into your EMS planning, for instance, setting environmental objectives based on specific community concerns about noise or traffic. Moving on to Clause 4.3, which is about determining the scope of the EMS. This is where you draw the line and decide what parts of your organization, which operations, and which products or services will be covered by your environmental management system. Why is defining this scope so important? Firstly, for clarity and focus. It prevents confusion about what's in and what's out, helping you concentrate your efforts and resources on the most significant environmental impacts within those defined boundaries. It ensures the EMS is effective and manageable. You can't manage everything at once, so define what you will manage effectively. A well-defined scope also adds credibility to your certification. When you say you're ISO 14001 certified, people need to know what that certification applies to. And critically, it helps you in identifying all relevant legal and other requirements that apply specifically within that defined scope. When you're defining your EMS scope, several factors must be considered. Firstly, revisit the external and internal issues we just discussed, from Clause 4.1. These issues will directly inform what needs to be included in your EMS. Secondly, your compliance obligations, from Clause 4.2, are non-negotiable. Whatever your scope is, all relevant legal and other requirements must be met within it. You need to clearly define the organizational units, functions, and physical boundaries. Are you certifying the entire company, just one specific plant, or even just a department? For instance, a large multinational corporation might start by certifying just one manufacturing facility to get familiar with the process before expanding to all their global sites. Also, specify the activities, products, and services that are included. A logistics company, for example, might decide their EMS will cover their vehicle fleet operations and warehouse management, but not their administrative offices. Crucially, you must consider your authority and ability to exercise control and influence. You can only include something in your direct EMS scope if you have the power to control its environmental aspects. For example, you can't directly include your supplier's factory in your EMS scope because you don't control their operations, but you can influence them through your procurement policies, making them an interested party rather than part of your direct scope. Finally, Clause 4.4, simply titled Environmental Management System. This is the overarching requirement that brings everything together. It states that your organization must establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve an EMS. Let's break down what each of those means. To establish an EMS means to design and set it up. Based on everything we discussed, your context, interested parties, and defined scope, you'll define the roles, responsibilities, specific processes, and necessary documentation. To implement means to put that design into action. This involves following your documented procedures, conducting all necessary training, and executing the environmental activities you've planned. To maintain your EMS means to ensure it remains effective and continues to function as intended, day after day, year after year. This involves regular reviews, internal audits to check performance, and keeping all your documented information current and accurate. And most importantly, to continually improve your EMS. This isn't a one-time thing, it's an ongoing journey. It means proactively looking for opportunities to enhance your environmental performance and make your EMS even more effective. This is the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle in constant motion. For example, after implementing an EMS, a company might find they've reduced waste, but then realize they can do even better by redesigning a product to use less material from the start. That leads to new objectives and processes for further improvement. Remember, the EMS isn't just a binder full of documents, it's a living system of interconnected processes. The process for identifying environmental aspects, for instance, directly feeds into setting environmental objectives, which then guides your operational control processes. Everything works together.